In terms of focus on corporate earlier stage venture capital and GE Ventures as a innovation driver for the parent company overall and impacting all the different GE business units. That has been around only for about probably 4 years. In addition to equity investing, we have a number of other platforms which is intended to drive innovation across GE, as I just mentioned. So other than venture investing, we have our out-licensing team, which takes GE intellectual property that we're not actively using within our business units to be able to license to third parties. We have a team called New Business Creation, which actively takes GE intellectual property, which we think that has extreme strong market and commercial potential, and building a business around that almost as an internal startup with the hope to eventually independently spin it off. And our newest division is an area called Catalyst, and what they look at is extremely early stage technology, which they think will be revolutionary. We of course will rely on our own sourcing channels in terms of our own private networks, but when you have 320,000+ employees at GE and a global footprint into literally every country in the world, that's an opportunity that we certainly try to take advantage of. For my particular purposes, since I cover the China platform, I can leverage our research and development center and all the engineers that are there to identify young startups that have potential investing possibilities. We have all sorts of sourcing and customer channels, so like our supply chain team, they can identify what they believe to be excellent companies that we are currently sourcing through as a potential channel. And then also on the customer side, from a product portfolio perspective, our business units, they may be engaging with different companies for a number of different reasons, either as a customer or possible sort of technology acquisition. And those type of companies, they will also introduce to me. So from a sourcing perspective, origination perspective, there are a number of avenues that we tap into the broader GE to benefit our deal pipeline. We have a strategic mandate, so companies that we invest in, they need to be somehow aligned to where the GE businesses are today or where we see them going. And so primarily GE is a B2B type of business, and so a lot of the venture investing and a lot of the excitement surrounding that, if you hear about where the growth drivers for China have been focused on consumerism and services, consumer services, and that's not an area that we play in terms of from a venture perspective. So I think that's a challenge for us. But from an opportunities perspective, I think there's still there's a lot of excitement for me personally, in terms of the Made in China 2025 initiative for domestic innovation in terms of bolstering the manufacturing power of China. That to me is, I think, an incredibly powerful initiative that I think is just now emerging. Whether you call it, Industry 4.0, advanced manufacturing, whatever you want to call it. I think that we're going to see a lot of growth opportunities from a venture perspective in China as China is trying to improve its, historically strong, manufacturing base and improving it and making all those manufacturing plants more brilliant. So we see a lot of future venture investment there. Before we make an investment into the company, we do take input from our business units, and our business units may have a view as whether or not this is competitive. Do we want to make a minority investment into this other smaller startup? And the answer to that is that it could depend. It could be something where we feel like we need to make this investment because they're a frenemy, but they're growing. The trend is growing toward what this startup is doing, and our larger business unit really should be learning from that. And if the startup is fearful of that, I mean, then that's something that's going to be discussed openly, and then a decision needs to be made by both sides. But what we find more often than not is that when we position ourselves to these startups as investing in their company to introduce them to the broader GE, to help them increase their revenue as a potential GE being a potential customer for them, that we have walls in place to protect the sharing of information, and we have no conditionality of an acquisition in the future. They generally are more comfortable with that when they understand how we structurally work and what the purpose of GE Ventures is for.